Tomorrow is the day. Well, at least from the time of me recording this, I don't know if I'll update it, if I'll post it tomorrow, but hopefully I'll get it done by today. But tomorrow is the day that we've all been waiting for. MR5 comes out. We have a new ban list in effect, and it's honestly going to be a really exciting format. I've been testing like non-stop. I've created so many decks, and I'm just ready to take off. And now I'm gonna basically give you guys a video on what I've considered to be like the best techs coming into this format. So I haven't played all of these. Some of these were just brain, like me thinking. However, I have played most of them actually, and honestly, most of them have worked very well. And I really think that all of them can come into effect. So we're gonna start off with the obvious now. Nibiru, I guess you could say it's not a tech, but I main deck Nibiru, so most people are citing it right now. I think you should main it. Not in every deck, obviously, but like for example, if you're running Shadows, I think it's a pretty good idea to main deck it. It's a light attribute anyway, so you can use it for construct and things like that. And then if you're running other decks, you can still main deck it if you have the space for it. We're gonna be seeing a lot of combo decks. I mean, Dinos are gonna be going crazy trying to VFDU. Synchros are gonna try to pop off, probably make hella quasars on you. Even Shadows, which is probably the highest contender coming into the new format, it does summon a lot. Like you can get away with the 4 summons, but like sometimes it will go into the 5, so it'll eat the Nibiru as well. There's a lot of decks that just eat Nibiru. You can side deck it as well. I think side decking is probably the safest route. It's what I do in certain decks, but like in my Shadow deck specifically, I do main deck this card. I definitely think it's worth it. Game one. Because game one, if they're not expecting it, it just wipes them out, and they really don't usually play around it the first game, so it can easily secure you a game out of nowhere. And then worst case scenario, you can use it as fusion material if you're playing Shadows. If you're playing another deck that you don't have another route for it, then maybe you don't want to use this as a main deck card, but I would tell you to strongly consider it. Now, Super Volley, everybody already knows that you should be running this card. I mean, there are decks that don't, obviously, but I find people running this card in decks that aren't even fusion based. And it's great because it removes stuff. But what I meant by Super Poly, putting it here, really didn't mean to play Super Poly because that's not a tech. A lot of people are already doing that. But I mean to play a Winda even if you're not playing Shadows. Even if you're not playing Shadows, you play a Winda, you super poly them, so the Shadows, and make the Winda, and then you now have a Winda against them, which puts them in a really tight position because they just lost 2 monsters, and they're now under Winda. Now, if you have space in the extra deck, you can do this. If you do not, you can always side the Winda as well. I do think you should be playing Super Poly this format. It's just a really good card. If you don't have space in the deck for it, or you don't think the deck mixes well with it, then you can side it as well. But honestly, I don't see any excuse not to run Super Poly unless you're literally running a deck that doesn't want a special summon, or you're running a deck that doesn't want to discard. So other than that, like if you're running a combo deck, you probably have the space for the Super Poly. Like Shadow should be running it. Several other decks should just be running it. Honestly, if you can afford a discard or you plus off your discards, then you definitely should be running Super Poly. It's a board wiper, helps for OTKs, and it's just a very good card because it takes away their monsters. It's just overall way too good to not be running it if it benefits your deck. Now, the next one is Widow Anchor. So Widow Anchor just came to 2. Um, Honestly, I have been messing with this. I built the Zodiac Sky Striker deck, and it's been doing really, really well. I'm hoping to showcase it this format. Actually, I'm gonna do a challenge to basically try to get into the top 10 of DB rated during this format, since I'm gonna be quarantined anyways. And tomorrow will be the first day of the challenge, and I am actually gonna probably use that deck coming in, and I'm gonna record my duels and do like a good video for you guys. Hopefully you guys will enjoy those. I'll do a deck profile at the end of it and a few plays. But the Widow Anchor is really good because first of all, just because you don't have to summon in your extra monsters anymore doesn't mean you can't. You can still choose to do so. So with Zodiacs, it has synergy because you can put Trident there and just don't go for the Hammer Conk play, and you can use your Sky Striker cards while you do that. Or you can, if you're playing aggressively, if you're playing the other Sky Striker cards, you can move it temporarily, use your Sky Striker cards, then do the Hammer Conk play. Obviously, if you have Wind the first turn, you're gonna set that. The reason why Widow Anchor first turn is you're just gonna set it. The reason why Widow Anchor is just so good is that yeah, you don't have Engage to search it. Oh well, but it's another impermanence. If you're going against like Dinos, for example, and they VFD you, that is a blowout card. I mean, there's really not much you can do after they VFD you, so you're gonna want to hit them with a Widow Anchor or something like that. I don't think you can do this to Yugioh if they're playing that. Oh wait, never mind. Luna Knights are dead anyways. But either way, it helps against Winda, and it helps against VFD. It helps against a lot of boss monsters right now. And honestly, it can also be used as protective if you're running a deck that can run through spells. You can set that not only negate to stop their plays, but you can even negate and take. So honestly, Widow Anchor and the Sky Striker engine in general is a good tech engine right now. Obviously, it's not at its most powerful. Without Sky Striker Engage, honestly, it's not going to be a deck of its own. It's going to just be a supporting role for another deck that might be able to utilize it. And the reason why Mind Control is here is also partially with Winda. I keep saying Winda, I apologize. Is also partially with Widow Anchor. So I put in here Hammer Kong and Dryden. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of zoo variants. I mean, I've already tested hella zoo stuff, and I have like 3 or 4 decks that run zoos, and it's just you can go into Leica, the one, or Chakanai, whichever what it's called in the CCG, with 2 level 4s, which means any deck that runs level 4 generic, they can make a Trident. So it's definitely going to be seeing its play, and taking a monster or Zodiac monster with Widow Anchor or Mind Control and then stacking a Trident onto it, whether you have to stack a Hammer Conk first or whether you can just stack the Trident immediately, it's a really good play. You take the monster away and now you have an interruption with just 1 card. So that's a really good idea and a really good play, which is another reason why enemy game controller is here. And enemy game controller, however, that's mostly for zoos. We're going to be seeing a few zoo mirrors here, and we already know how enemy game controller works in the zoo mirror. We've seen this time and time again back in the zoo formats that were before the Dryden and Broadbow ban, and even some other decks can still run it. You could also still run it in against Sky Striker, not Sky Striker, against Shadows, because you take their window, link away with it, or if you're running Shadows yourself, you could fuse with it, and you can just do different things with that. Enemy controller, and honestly, it's good against Zoo, it's good against Sky Strikers, and then it's good against Dino. If you get the UTC, if they didn't VFD you, if they did VFD you, well, you're kind of stuck. But the thing is, taking VFD is a good play, because if you don't take it with Widow Anchor, because if you take it with Widow Anchor, you negate the effect. But if you take it with anything else, and they can't change the effect, then you can use the effect and just flip everything face down, and you're done with all the problems. XYZ Reborn, this is only if you're playing zoos, unless there's another deck that I can't think of that can use it. It gives you back to Trident, but it also gives you access to a really nasty play, where you can go Reborn Chakanine, summon a Link, then, sorry, not a Link, a Zoo Exceed from the graveyard, then summon an Exceed on top of Chakanine and summon another Chakanine, then again summon an Exceed, and then boom, make the Fortress Link, and then take an opponent's card, bring back either Chakanine and do another Chakanine play for even more crazy stuff, or bring back Trident, and then you get a pop and you have an interruption, because you can probably attach a Whiptail to it, or you can do into more plays and make Tiger Mode or things like that. So it's really good, because during your opponent's turn, if you use Trident and then they out your Trident, you get an interruption with it because you can summon Trident back. But it's also really good because it can enable that play with Chakanine, where you can just summon 3 Exceeds and then go into the Fortress, which is broken. These 2 hand traps, Dimensional Shifter and Winter Cherries, I can see them getting a lot of play, to be honest. I wouldn't main deck the Cherries unless you're running a deck that just has a lot of extra deck space. But even then, I don't think I would risk main decking it. However, the Shifter, I can definitely see people main decking it. You chain this to Shadow Fusion, and they're done. You chain this, excuse me, to Dinos, they're done. You chain this to Synchro, they're usually done. Like, this card is really good, and if your deck doesn't mind the banishing, or if it pluses off of it, this is a card you're gonna want to run in the main deck. It's gonna wipe out so many decks in the first turn, and unless they can stop it with a Gamma or a Call by the Grave, which I'm not seeing that many people running right now, then it's gonna blow them out of the water, and then you just gotta do what you gotta do next turn. I saw last format some Thunder Dragon builds that were pretty decent at OTKing that would utilize this to perfection. So I honestly, this is one of the few that I haven't tested. I've tried all of these beforehand, but I haven't tested this Dimensional Shifter because I just don't play a deck that really benefits off of it or can even survive its effects. But if your deck benefits off of it or just doesn't care about being banished, then I would definitely go for it. It's honestly a super strong hand trap right now. Cherries. Let me talk about Cherries. Cherries is a deck it's a card, sorry, that comes in and out of use. But let me talk to you about some of the best decks that are going to be out right now. First of all, Shadow. Without Construct, Shadow are not doing much. I mean, they can still play, but they're seriously crippled without a construct, without a single construct. Then I have seen a lot of people flock to BA to try it for this format. Take out their Dante, wipes them out immediately. Excuse me. Zodiacs, you can take out the Trident if they're playing Zodiacs, and then there's other. Oh, and then Dino, for example, you can try to take out the VFD, which is like the worst card for them to make against you, because everything else, honestly, in Dinos is playable around, but it's just a VFD is just too much. Like it's hard to play around a VFD. It's a one card floodgate that stops all your monster effects. So you can play around a Logia, you can play around a Dryden, you can even play around a UTC, but a VFD is pretty hard to play around unless you're running like a spell or trap deck that doesn't really do combos to using its monster effects. Then it's tough. So like there's a few cards that you can run with the Cherries, and you can even run Cross Sheep if you run it. Like there's just a lot of cards that you can use in Cherries to wipe out. So I would side deck it, and then I wouldn't play it unless you're playing a deck like Subterrors that just has a lot of extra deck space. But if you are playing that deck, or maybe you're playing Shadows and you already have the space, you already have the construct, and then you could all put in like one or two more cards and then side the other ones. There's different things you could do with this card, but honestly, right now it's a blowout card versus a lot of decks. You might want to wait a little bit longer before using it to see how the meta defines and see what decks are being played the most. But honestly, it can be a very strong blowout card. Talking about strong blowout cards, Soul Drain. This is looking like the best floodgate of the format. There's just too many grave effects going on right now. We're talking about Shadows, we're talking about Dino, even excuse me, Shadows, Dino, even Synchro. Like there's so many decks that are using the graveyard right now, and if you're running a control deck like Subterrors or even True Draco or things like that, you can use Soul Drain, and they're not doing much. Honestly, excuse me. Aside from that, it also has banished effects, so it could even stop Thunder Dragons if you run into those, which I doubt you will. But like if you do, like it's just a really good floodgate right now. There can only be one as strong, but Dryden will pop it, which I guess it doesn't do too much to do, but it does to some plays. Like they can't do Ram plays, they can't do things like that. But honestly, Soul Drain is really good right now. It's gonna stop so many decks in their tracks that I really would consider it if you're running a control deck. This is my favorite so far, Epsilon. So we're already used to running Gamma. We've been running Gamma for a long time, but I've never seen anybody run Epsilon, and I think the time is now. So if you're running, like I run in my Shadow deck, Gammas, right? If you're running Shadows and you think you're gonna go second, or if you know you're gonna go second, well, no, you can't really. I mean, you can know, but if you know you're gonna go second, that means you're choosing it, and then I wouldn't really recommend setting it in. But like, if you think your opponent's gonna make you go second, you can side this out for the Gammas, and even trade 3 Gammas for 3 Epsilon, and this stops Dimensional Barrier, which is really good, because if you're running Shadows, you're running Terraforming, you're running the if you're running the invoked version, you're running the Terraforming, the invoked field spell, which is Magical Meltdown. You're running El Shadow, you're running Shadow Fusion, you're running a lot of cards that you're going to be using before you commit to the board. And once you activate a fusion spell part, they're going to chain Dimensional Barrier, and if you activate Sun, you're negating the Dimensional Barrier and getting 2 monsters on board. Then you get resolving your fusion spell, and then from there you can make a cross sheep, or you can do a lot of plays that can just allow you to seal the game really quickly. And being able to negate that Dimensional Barrier is crucial, because if you get hit by Dimensional Barrier, your plays are going to be stopped and you're not going to have anything to do. So honestly, Sun right now, it's a really, really good card to play. And talking about really, really good cards to play, especially that Combat Dimensional Barrier, most people don't use Dimensional Barrier off rip. So Denko Sekka, it's a light, so you can use it for construct. You can smack this onto the field. If you usually you're only going to use it for construct if you draw 2, but you can smack this onto the field when you're playing against a Terror, when you're playing against Altergeist, or when you're playing against any even in the mirror match. This is good because usually I've seen a lot of people in the mirror match just set the Super Poly and set the El Shadow and not even make too many plays, and then wait for them to activate an effect to summon, and then use El Shadow and summon the window, things like that. You smack this onto the field and they're not doing any of that. That's done. So honestly, yeah, really good. Plus a light target, so it has multiple benefits. And then finally, Exceed Universe. I don't really think this is going to see much play, but if Zodiac does take off, we already know what this does against Zodiac, so not much to say. But yeah, guys, these are a bunch of interesting texts that I've come up with for the side deck, extra deck, and main deck. I definitely do encourage you guys to consider them, and hopefully these cards will help you in this new upcoming format to find your perfect deck list and bring you guys some wins. Anyways, till next time.